On October 10, 2025, former President Donald Trump shook the global economy by announcing a 100% tariff on all Chinese imports. This bold move was unprecedented and sent shockwaves through international markets, leaving economists and political analysts scrambling to understand the full implications. Delivered via social media, this was more than politics, it was an economic shockwave. The announcement quickly went viral, with millions of shares and comments flooding in from around the world, reflecting a mix of support, outrage, and confusion. The tariff set for November 1st threatened to double prices on everything from smartphones to sneakers. Retailers braced for impact, anticipating a significant drop in consumer spending as prices soared, and shoppers expressed their concerns over the sudden increase in costs. Years of rising U.S. China tensions had led to this breaking point. The trade war, which had been simmering for years, now seemed to be boiling over, with both sides digging in their heels and preparing for a prolonged conflict. Trump framed the move as a defense against what he called China's hostile economic maneuvers. He argued that the tariffs were necessary to protect American jobs and industries from unfair competition and intellectual property theft. The financial fallout was immediate. Analysts estimated $1,065 trillion could be wiped from the U.S. economy. Investors reacted with panic, selling off stocks and causing markets to plummet, while financial analysts warned of a potential recession. Stock markets plunged, and the global trading system seemed to teeter. The interconnected nature of the world economy meant that the effects were felt far beyond the US and China, with markets in Europe and Asia also experiencing significant declines. Trump hinted at possible export controls on critical software, signaling a new front in the conflict. This raised concerns in the tech industry, where companies feared losing access to essential tools and markets, potentially stifling innovation and growth. He left a narrow window for negotiation, but the tone was combative. Diplomatic channels were flooded with urgent communications, as both sides sought to find a resolution without appearing weak or conceding too much. The world watched, uncertain if this was a negotiating tactic or the start of a full economic split. News outlets provided round-the-clock coverage, analyzing every statement and move from both governments, while citizens around the globe anxiously awaited the outcome. The stakes had never been higher. The potential for a new economic order loomed large, with the possibility of long-term consequences for international trade, political alliances, and global stability. Trump's tariff threat was triggered by a bold move from Beijing, one that sent shockwaves through global markets and governments alike. China tightened its grip on rare earth exports, materials that are absolutely essential for everything from smartphones and electric vehicles to advanced military hardware and renewable energy technologies. While these elements aren't truly rare in the Earth's crust, they're notoriously difficult and environmentally hazardous to extract and refine. Over decades, China invested heavily in mastering this complex process, and now controls a staggering 90% of global refining capacity. By suddenly restricting exports, China threatened to choke off the supply of these critical materials to the world's most advanced industries, from Silicon Valley to European automakers. For the United States, this was more than just an economic maneuver. It was a direct challenge to national security and America's technological leadership. China's new rules required government approval for any product containing Chinese rare earths, regardless of where it was manufactured or assembled, effectively extending Beijing's influence far beyond its own borders. This move sent shockwaves through global supply chains, creating chaos and uncertainty for manufacturers worldwide, who suddenly faced shortages and skyrocketing costs. President Trump quickly accused China of economic blackmail, vowing to respond forcefully and warning that the U.S. would not be held hostage over critical resources. China's move was a masterstroke of economic statecraft, weaponizing a resource that underpins the modern world and turning it into a powerful bargaining chip. Companies everywhere scrambled to navigate the new restrictions, seeking alternative suppliers, rethinking production lines, and lobbying governments for support. The rare earths gambit made it clear. This was no ordinary trade dispute, but a high-stakes battle for control over the future of technology and industry. As the world watched, the tech future of entire nations now hung in the balance, with rare earths at the very heart of the struggle. At the heart of this conflict is the tariff, a tax on imported goods. When the U.S. imposes a tariff, importers pay extra, making foreign products more expensive. The goal: push consumers to buy American-made goods instead. Supporters say tariffs protect jobs and industries, But the costs ripple through the economy. Importers often pass the extra cost to consumers, fueling inflation. Everyday items, electronics, clothes, cars, become pricier. Tariffs rarely go unanswered. China retaliated with its own taxes on U.S. goods. This tit-for-tat cycle escalates into a trade war, disrupting global commerce. Both sides suffer. Exports drop, jobs are lost, and uncertainty reigns. The result? Higher prices, shrinking economies, and a world on edge. Tariffs may sound simple, but their impact is anything but. The 100% tariff threat was just the latest escalation in a years-long U.S. China trade war. What began as a dispute over trade imbalances and intellectual property had now spiraled into a high-stakes standoff, with both sides digging in deeper than ever before. In 2025 alone, tariffs soared to unprecedented levels, sending shockwaves through global markets. Truces were hastily brokered, only to collapse under the weight of mutual suspicion. Hopes for a lasting peace flickered, but uncertainty loomed over every negotiation. Brief reprieves in spring and summer offered a glimmer of optimism, as business leaders and diplomats worked tirelessly to find common ground. Yet, as autumn arrived, October shattered the fragile calm, reigniting old tensions and dashing hopes for resolution. China's decision to tighten controls on rare earth minerals, combined with Trump's aggressive tariff ultimatum, reignited hostilities. The stakes were raised as both nations targeted each other's economic lifelines, signaling a new phase of confrontation. The conflict quickly spread beyond tariffs. Both sides imposed new port fees and stricter inspections on each other's ships, raising costs, delaying shipments, and adding layers of complexity to global supply chains. Retaliation became the norm, with every move met by an even harsher response. The tit-for-tat measures created a cycle of escalation, leaving businesses and workers caught in the crossfire. The U.S. considered sweeping export controls on critical technology sectors, aiming to curb China's tech ambitions. In response, China vowed to fight back, threatening countermeasures that could disrupt global innovation. Diplomatic language hardened, and the cycle of escalation seemed unstoppable. Negotiations grew tense, with each side blaming the other for the impasse, and the world bracing for further fallout. The world watched anxiously as the two superpowers edged closer to economic self-destruction. Global markets trembled, and smaller nations worried about being caught in the crossfire of this economic battle. The trade war was no longer just about goods or tariffs. It had become a contest for global power and influence, with the outcome set to shape the world's economic future for years to come. Behind the headlines, the trade war hit ordinary Americans hardest. Farmers lost their biggest market as China's tariffs made U.S. crops too expensive. Silos filled with unsold soybeans, debts mounted, and futures grew uncertain. On factory floors, higher costs for Chinese components squeezed manufacturers. Even giants like Boeing saw billion-dollar deals with China evaporate. For consumers, prices climbed on everything from toys to electronics. Inflation rose above 4%, eroding paychecks and straining families. Job losses mounted as businesses cut back or closed. The very jobs tariffs were meant to protect were now at risk. The economic pain was real, widespread, and growing. The trade war's true cost was measured in lost livelihoods. The U.S. China trade war sent shockwaves through the global economy. Supply chains built over decades unraveled, hitting countries from Vietnam to Germany. U.S. China trade plummeted, imports and exports both fell sharply in 2025. The World Trade Organization warned of an 80% collapse in bilateral trade if escalation continued. Markets became volatile, reacting wildly to every new development. Allies grew frustrated with America's go-it-alone approach, straining diplomatic ties. Planned summits were threatened, and cooperation on global issues faltered. The conflict's ripple effects reached every corner of the world. The global order was suddenly up for grabs. As the trade war's toll mounted, both governments scrambled to soften the blow. The U.S. rolled out massive subsidies for struggling farmers, using taxpayer money to offset lost sales. Critics called it a costly band-aid, not a solution. China offered loans and tax breaks to exporters, pushing them to find new markets. Both sides ramped up patriotic messaging, urging citizens to endure hardship for the national cause, but the loss of trust and reliable markets couldn't be fixed with cash alone. The cycle of retaliation and rescue deepened the crisis. The world's two largest economies were locked in a costly standoff. As of November 3, 2025, the world stands at a crossroads. Trump's 100% tariffs loom, and the threat of global recession is real. If both sides follow through, supply chains could collapse, inflation could soar, and millions could lose jobs. The world could split into rival economic blocs, triggering a new Cold War. Businesses would face massive costs to reconfigure operations, with consumers footing the bill. Yet, a narrow path to de-escalation remains, if both sides make real concessions. A deal could restore stability and spark a market rally. But even if this crisis is averted, deep distrust lingers. The choices made now will shape the global order for decades. The stakes are nothing less than the economic fate of billions. The world holds its breath, waiting for a resolution.